Welcome to the Costa Rica Travel and Living podcast. I'm your host, Adam Baker. Once again, this is your podcast that discusses everything travel and living related to this part of the world in Central America. This week, I'm actually your introductory host, as my colleague, Jess Luecke, took the podcast and she spoke to one of her previous traveling guests, Ryan Jenness. Ryan's actually been to Costa Rica with his family twice now, and they came down from Wisconsin. He chats with Jess about everything you need to know about planning your Costa Rican vacation, what to pack, where to go, how to deal with the airports as a big family. It's a fantastic conversation. If you have any questions for us, let us know in the description box below and we'll get right back to you. And as ever, if you're enjoying this podcast, please give us a like or a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to stay in touch to never miss an episode. So without further ado, here's Jess's podcast.
So, hello, Ryan. How's it going?
Hey Jess, good. How you doing?
Good, good. We're super excited to have you today. So, thanks for taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah, you bet. No problem.
Awesome. So, maybe let's start with you just telling us a bit about your family. So,
Yeah,
where are you
sure.
guys from? Tell us about the
Yeah.
kiddos.
Yep. We're from Wisconsin, a suburb of Milwaukee. We've got four kids right now, age ranging from 5 to 14. And so when we first took our first trip to Costa Rica, though, our youngest, that was 3 years ago now, so she would have been about in the two range.
Nice.
Yeah,
And so, how many times have you been to Costa Rica?
twice now. So we were 3 years ago, and then I believe last year, yes. So two times.
Awesome. Perfect. And how often do you guys travel as a family in general, outside of
Yeah,
Wisconsin, say?
yeah. Typically twice a year, we'll do some sort of trip. So like a spring break or a summer trip, or something over the Thanksgiving, something like that. So twice a year.
And would you say that some of those or most of those are international or sometimes in the States too?
Usually domestic, usually in the States. We've been to Mexico a couple times. We've been to Dominican Republic, and of course Costa Rica. But usually in the States.
Okay. Awesome. I think I just want to chat with you today because as a father of four, you've got your experience with the different ages and kids and several kids and different locations. And I think it's super helpful as a soon-to-be parent as well. Here, how do you manage it? How do you make some of these decisions? What are some of your initial feelings of, traveling internationally? How did you, get
Hmm.
past those or some things you wish you would have known, et cetera? So super excited to chat with you today.
Yeah.
One of the first things I want to kind of dive into is like planning and packing. When it comes to destinations, or maybe even like your first international trip, like when
Mm.
did you guys feel like your family was at the age where you could do an international trip?
Yeah. Well, it depends who you ask. If you ask me or if you ask my wife. I don't know. I think that it was, um, internet. I don't necessarily. So my wife and I have, I guess, different. I wouldn't say that I'm like a super adventurous traveler, you know. But as far as traveling internationally is concerned, we probably wouldn't have gone to Costa Rica had it not been for like friends of ours that live down there. We probably would not have, done that, but we felt more comfortable, especially like knowing people there, and then obviously, having people that can, plan the trip for us, made me more comfortable. I think that I don't know if that it's a certain age necessarily that it was like, okay, now they're past this threshold, so now we're ready to go. I think it really just kind of depends on, um, how well your kids can sit in an airplane or how well they can sit in an airport. I think that's really family specific. But I mean, for us, we didn't really notice much of a difference, quite honestly, in the travel going to, I mean, the duration of the trip, you really don't notice it too much. If you're going to California or if you're going to Costa Rica, there's really not that big of a difference, to be honest with you. You're still, you got a connecting flight somewhere and you're in an airport for a little while and then you're there. And so I think that that's probably one of the things that I was most apprehensive about was like getting down there with the kids and like that travel experience there. And I got to say that that was easier than I thought it was going to be.
And what would you say makes, like, as parents of four kids, what makes a successful trip, whether it's Costa Rica, international, domestic, etc.?
Mhm.
What would you chalk up as like a good trip? Like, what does that mean to you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we evaluate our trips usually about a month after we get home from the trip. You know, if we're missing the place, if we're still feeling that place, and we're trying to figure out a way to get back to that place, we know it's a good trip. And I think that that was very, very clear for us with Costa Rica. Is when we got home, it was very clear to us that we want to go back. And so I think that that's kind of our general, I guess, litmus test, if you will, as to whether or not that was a worthwhile trip.
Leaves you wanting a little bit more.
At least we want a little bit more. You know, everybody's happy to be home after any trip. You know, you get home, you're tired, you want your own bed. And so there's that, you know, once you get past that though, once you get back into your familiar surroundings and you can still, and you still are, you know, thinking longingly of the place that you were just at, I think that's a pretty good indicator that you've made the right selection.
Awesome. And how do you guys go about planning any trip, again, whether it be in the States or internationally, so that all of your kids enjoy it, right? Because you have such
Yeah,
a, what is there, 10 years difference between your oldest and your
totally.
youngest.
Totally.
How do you go about planning tours? Which tours you guys split up? Like, tell me about that.
Yeah. I mean, we try to keep it simple, honestly. If you try to focus too much on the activity within or at the certain location you're going to, that makes it tough to get everybody on board. I mean, for us, like good weather and pool access, ocean access, and having a vibrant like outdoor scene, things that you can do just walking around. Everybody, you know, it doesn't matter what age you are in our family. Like we enjoy kind of walking around and seeing things, whether you're 5-year old or 14. You know, that's a big box to check. So we got to make sure we can do that. Because yeah, I mean, if you start planning like these, you know, like these amusement park trips, oftentimes somebody's disappointed at the end of it, you know,
Or exhausted. Because
or
they're long
exhausted,
days normally.
or both, or irritable, you know, like the whole thing. So we try to keep it simple. We try to keep it nature based, and we try to keep it a, generally like a walkable sort of trip where you can be outside a lot and you don't need a lot to like entertain you. You don't need a lot of flashing lights.
And with four kids, do you guys like to like pre-book tours? And if so, how often? Is it every other day you guys like to kind of have an
Yeah,
activity planned, or you just kind of like to roll with it? What do you find works best?
we almost never pre-book activities. We used to initially when we started taking, you know, trips when we didn't have as many kids, and it's just never the right time. You feel like it's forced. You can't just kind of relax and just go with the flow of the trip. And so we stopped doing that years ago, and it's been a lot better. Like we'll go down. I mean, I'll take, you know, there are some exceptions. Like we went to Savannah, you know, we planned a walking tour of the city, like exception. But to map out each and every day, like you don't really know. You don't know what you don't know. And, you know, weather could be a factor. So we try to, when we get there, we're like, all right, here's the forecast. Here's how we're feeling today. You know, we usually plan a couple of days out. You know, we're not going to exhaust ourselves trying to stick to some sort of arbitrary itinerary, if that makes sense.
And would you say that the tours that you do are mostly active, or do you also find that there's a value to like cultural experiences or checking out markets? Like maybe not an organized tour always, but
Hmm.
like trying to get like how important is it to you or your kids to do like cultural things?
Yeah, I mean, we'll just plan to go to a certain like location and just see what happens. So if we're gonna say we're gonna, you know, go to this beach today, we're gonna go to Coco today, we're gonna spend the day there and just kind of see what happens. You know, sometimes we might run into you know, we may want to rent something or maybe we want to have an activity while we're there. But we typically just kind of start like we take it big picture, and then when we get there, we fill in the details. You know what I'm
Nice.
saying?
And when it comes to packing, whether it be for the airplane or the
Yeah,
airports or travel within, like what
yeah.
are your top must packs that just like sometimes save the day?
I will say first, before we get into that, I will say do not overpack for any trip, especially for Costa Rica. Uh, Believe it or not, the first time we went there, we went for 2 weeks and we did not check a single thing. And that was with the exception of like a car seat, but we did
Right.
not check any luggage. And that really forces you to um, prioritize and simplify the experience. And it worked out just fine. And obviously, like you're staying at places where they have a washer dryer, like I'm not wearing the same, you know, dirty shirt for 4 days in a row. But it really makes it a lot easier. It de-stresses you when you're there if you just have one bag of your stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But as far as like our must-pack items, I will say that our experience our experience was that the when we were looking at these places that we were staying, they have the pools, which is nice, but they don't have the same sort of guidelines that you might be used to in the States as far as protection, like around the pool. So, in the States, it has to be fenced and there's all these, things that you have to have. And so there's not the same sort of like code in Costa Rica. And I'm sure that's true in any foreign country. So we bought these like little motion sensors off of Amazon and we just placed them by like, one of the houses. We put them by like the stairwell. So if a kid went downstairs, it like we plug the other end of it into our room and it would just like ring in our room. And then we put one by the back door, going out to the pool. So if somebody like walked downstairs or was down there already, we would hear it would, wake us up, ding dong sort of thing. And
Mhm.
that was really helpful. I mean, one night our one of our daughters slept walked and she walked downstairs and it like woke us up. So that was a really
Right.
nice thing to do. I don't know that it's necessarily like a must pack, but it was a must pack for me.
I
And
think it was
then
also dependent perhaps to where you stayed.
depending on
Uh,
yeah, and they tell
the
you like
homes are,
yeah, and like we reached out to, we looked at the house and we saw the layout. We're like, yeah, our kids are a little young. Like I want to bring that motion sensor. And it was like $20 on Amazon or something like that. And we actually
yeah.
still use it like for just like random stuff, today.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I'd say, and then like a digital thermometer or like a thermometer, we'd always travel with one of those. You never know when you're going to need it. Tylenol and Band-Aids, a sound machine, that for especially for the little kids that they're used to at home, pop that in there. Because sleep is really important. Like we try not to get too far off their sleep schedule, otherwise it becomes a miserable affair in the morning. And then for Costa Rica in particular, Dramamine. If you have any kids or adults that are prone to, car sickness, motion sickness, Dramamine's a big help. I mean, you guys don't have as many automatic transmission vehicles down there as we do up here, and you'd have just a few more mountainous roads than we have here. So
Yeah. I
that
think
so that herky jerky stuff is that like some kids and adults aren't used to that, and so being ready for that is
Dramamine, the patches,
the
I know there's like
patches. Yep,
the bracelets or like that have
bracelets.
the
Yeah, yeah.
all helpful for
And
sure.
honestly, and like in the puke bag, you know,
Yeah.
kind sort of used
Never
it.
know.
Sort of used it. But
Um,
I would say that. I mean, I don't think that there's anything necessarily that I would. That's pretty much our must pack.
okay.
Yeah.
And what about like travel days? Have you guys,
Hmm.
I'm sure you have, but like travel delays, you miss your
Hmm.
flight. How do you guys handle that with six people minimum? Luggage, kids, like do you bring extra
Yeah.
stuff in case it happens? You just kind of
Yeah.
roll with it if it does.
Yeah. It's happened to us, and I can tell you that it's a heck of a lot easier if you haven't checked any luggage. You got everything you need. And
That's true.
so it's happened to us the first time we went down there. And we had all our stuff. And so that was pretty easy. But it's just like it's really not that different than taking a long
Regular
flight.
life.
It's really not that different. And so I can tell you that once we got global reentry, that was a big deal. That was a big deal. We certainly use that all the time now with the kids, and um, the international travel stuff. It's nice.
Yeah. And what about like keeping the kids entertained, which maybe for your older ones isn't really an issue anymore. They can maybe
Hmm.
entertain themselves or take a nap, but like especially
Yeah.
for younger ones, I don't know, maybe ages 3 or 4 to 8. Like,
Yeah.
do you guys do screen time? Do you bring other things? Like, what have you found to be helpful?
Well, yeah. So, um, my wife and I have different opinions on that. You know, there's we will bring the coloring books and things that normal. Uh, I'm sure every parent can think of a little game or activity or something to keep their kid occupied. But yeah, honestly, like I try to get a screen for a kid, to keep, like, especially the last hour and a half or whatever. Like, you got to do it. I don't think that and most of the planes now have the actual screen built into the back of the seat, so they pretty much take that off your plate. So I don't think there's a real trick to that. Um, I would say that be prepared for both, though. Be prepared to have screens and not have screens, because you're going to need that. So, like, we'll bring like a deck of cards or something, and like coloring books, and like it, maybe their favorite book or something like that, depending on the age of them. But you got to have a good mix. You got to have like a little bit of variety.
I think it's also important, like, where you're coming from, right? Because if you're coming from Florida, Texas, like, you can get here in what, 2.5, 3 hours? It's pretty quick.
Not a big deal.
But if you're
Yeah.
coming from, Canada or the Midwest or even like one of the coasts, it might be, a total of 6 or 7 hours flying.
Yeah.
And you might need a little bit more wiggle room or things to do during that time. But
Hmm.
you can get here pretty fast too, depending on where you're coming from.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I honestly, I don't recall. We fly a lot, but I don't recall the Costa Rica, total trip being that much more different or that much more difficult than a normal trip to Miami. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you're connecting in Atlanta. You know what I mean? Like, you just are. And
Right. Right.
so it's just I think it's like a mental hurdle than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, taking 4 kids out of the country for the first time, I'm sure you were nervous about or stressed about a few things. What were some of those things? And did you find that they were relevant?
Hmm.
Or what did you have in your mind that it was going to look like that maybe you were surprised by?
As far as like the kids are concerned, as far as
Yeah, just
traveling
like
with the
taking
kids,
four
or
kids for the first
yeah,
time out of the country, like what were you worried about? And like, were they valid concerns? Or like parents that are taking their kids out of the country
yeah,
for the first time, like
yeah.
what would you say to them?
I was worried about just the basic stuff, like food and water, and like, the stuff you don't know, like crime, all the things that I'm sure that everybody Googles before they take an international trip anywhere in the world. You're looking at those sorts of things. Um, and none of those things were, of any concern when we got down there. It seemed extremely safe, good, quality food and water everywhere we went. So I didn't really have none of those concerns actually came to fruition. I think those were the biggest ones. And it's really the unknown. This is a foreign country, so that means it must be dangerous. It's like, I don't know. Things aren't particularly safe in metropolitan areas around the United States. You know what I mean? So
Right.
you have, and again, it's the fear of the unknown, and putting it in perspective, though, it was not a valid fear, looking in hindsight.
I mean, I've lived here for 8 years, and people will ask me, especially parents, like, is it
Yeah.
safe down there? And I'm like, listen, I grew up close to Chicago. I don't do anything here that I would do in Chicago, right? I wouldn't walk
Yeah.
around the city of Chicago at 11 p.m. or even quite frankly, Milwaukee.
Milwaukee, same thing. No, yeah,
I just wouldn't, right?
right.
And the fact you can drink the water here, like that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Even like people that are vegetarian or have dietary restrictions,
Yeah.
they can pretty much handle all that down here too. The main dish is rice and beans. So for vegetarians or people that are, gluten free, it's a pretty easy country to navigate. So at least for a
Yeah.
first trip, I think some of the things, like you said, that you might initially have been worried about, you find that here perhaps aren't really a concern.
Yeah, and those were the big ones. And I don't think that's uncommon. I think most parents probably go through that list as well.
What about any mistakes you guys have looked back and been like, man, why did we do it that
Mm,
way? Or we wish we would have done this, or if we
yeah.
had one more day, we definitely wanted to check out X.
Mm. Um, I think that's I wouldn't say well, I one of our first mistakes was not following the advice of our travel agent with regard to the hotel, our first hotel we stayed at. But that was quickly resolved. But it wasn't a good fit for us, and we kind of knew that. We were just, we wanted to save a nickel, and it didn't, in hindsight, didn't make much sense. So I'd say I guess you could chalk that up to a mistake. I wouldn't say a mistake, but like when I go back again, when the first time we went, we're trying to like hit as many places as we can. And so, but if I were just going to go back again, I would probably not do that. I would try to say, okay, this is where I want to be for this entire trip, because I don't think I'd want to spend as much time in the car, with the kids, um, as we did the first time around. But at the same time, would I change that? I wouldn't. I would still do it because you don't know what you're missing. Like we went to Arnold Springs in the middle of the country, right? And the most amazing, breathtaking experience and surroundings I've ever seen in my life. But would I have given that up to stay at Tamarindo for the entirety of the trip? I wouldn't. But when I go back next time, I would say, okay, I'm just going to go this place or I'm going to go that place. So I wouldn't say that it was a mistake. I would just say that I know enough now to be like, I am going to just choose to go here this time as opposed to try to see them both. But if you're going for the first time, I think it's a great thing to see both, especially if you're going for any sort of, 10 days plus. I think that's a really good thing to do is check out both of those things. And we've been from, coast to coast and in the middle. And so I feel very fortunate that I could probably plan a more efficient trip next time, being like, okay, guys, what do we want to do? Because I mean, you got the differences between the coasts are very different. I mean, they're stark. And so knowing that now would allow us to, I guess, just really like narrow in on what kind of trip we want.
Well, I think it's interesting too, because it really depends who you're traveling with. Because maybe you and your wife would be like, hey, we'd probably go
It's
back
true.
here. But with kids, I think they'd enjoy this other place more.
Hmm.
What would you say to families? And I get this every now and then. Families are like, well, I see, I only have 7 or 8 days. I want to do 2 nights in each location and check out, 3 or 4 places.
Hmm.
Especially if there's kids, what would be your initial reaction to that as someone that has
Um,
traveled the country with kids?
I mean, it depends on the kids, but I probably wouldn't do that. It depends. I mean, I could see somebody liking that sort of boom, boom, but for us, when we like to try to like immerse ourselves a little bit into the day to day of wherever we are. Um, and I don't know, boy, that's tough because I get why somebody would want to do that. I do. Um, I think that might be a little tough to do, especially if you're traveling with little kids. And um, because that travel can be kind of exhausting. And by the time you get there, it may take you a half a day to just like recover from the travel. I mean, that would be the case for my family. Like we would get off off the bus and we would just like sleep in the hotel for a few hours. And that seems like a waste to me. But I could get if somebody with maybe older kids and or like resilient kids, I could see that working. It just probably wouldn't work for our set.
Yeah. Awesome. And you guys that have now been on both coasts, you've been to
Mm-hmm.
Fortuna, you've seen, a
Mm-hmm.
fair amount of the country. For a family that's coming for the first time, and again, you have a wide range of kids. You have some teenagers, you have younger
Mm-hmm.
kids. What would you say are like your top three can't miss, either tours, experiences, locations, but just
Yeah,
like these are the top two or three things that we loved. Like my family in general loved these things about Costa Rica. You got to check them out.
I knew you were gonna ask that question. And that's an impossible question. You know that. I would say if I had to, and before I hopped on here with you, I looked back at our old pictures and videos from our trips, um, just to, you know, reignite my memory. And I think Arnold Springs, I think that's gotta be, if not number one, it's gotta be in the top three. Having that, the hot spring with the swim up pool and waking up in the morning, which we did we got in at night and we couldn't see anything because it's pitch black naturally. And opening those drapes, walking outside and seeing that beautiful mountain in front of you with the smoke billowing from the top. I mean, I'll never forget that. And nor will our kids. I'd say Arnold Springs number one. And honestly, like, I love the Costa Rican vacation because you can literally do like the normal activity that you do literally anywhere else is an extraordinary activity in Costa Rica. Like going to breakfast. I mean, we're sitting there at Capitan Suizo in Tamarindo, and there's like the most exotic birds that I've ever seen in my life, like just landing on the railing next to me, waiting for me to get up so they can, pick my crumbs or whatever. Just going to the pool and having howler monkeys swinging branches above you. And then, we're sitting on the beach and just looking up at a tree as you're, on the chair and you're seeing a sloth in a tree above, like normal stuff that you would do like any other vacation spot in the world. That ordinary is extraordinary there, So I mean, aside from like hitting up a waterfall, which I would also recommend, and you guys don't have a shortage of them. Um, Aside from that, I think that you don't have to necessarily plan to go out and see nature. Nature is going to come see you. Like it's just going to happen. You don't have to be so precise. And that's why I love the Costa Rican vacation is because you just go on with your daily life, do what you normally do. And like the cool stuff that makes Costa Rica so unique will just happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm sure you do. Yeah.
How did you, this question just came into my head. As someone who's obviously risen your kids in the States, how do you think the service industry here treats children? Like, did you feel like your kids were a burden? Did you feel like they were well
No,
accommodated? Like,
no.
tell me about that dynamic.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up because that we always talk about that. The culture in Costa Rica is so warm and accepting of children, way more than the States, you know? I mean, you can go to different states or different parts of the country and they'll treat children a little bit differently. Um, but you go down to Costa Rica and they are just so accommodating. Children are not a burden. They are welcome everywhere. I mean, our first night there, it was our anniversary, and the kids were like exhausted. We just got in, and the kids were exhausted, but we wanted to go get something to eat out, obviously at the resort there. And the wait staff like put together like a makeshift bed for my 2-year-old, like in the corner. Um, and because they knew it was our anniversary, and they were trying to, help the kids get comfortable so that we could have a nice dinner, And so, and that was the totally not uncommon. I mean, that's how it was everywhere we went. So from the standpoint of, you know, kids being out of place, absolutely not. I mean, that is with absolute certainty is not going to be an issue.
Awesome. And I know too that there are some families, especially as Airbnb and VRBO become more popular, lots of families are choosing to go that route.
Hmm.
You've done both, right? So you've
Hmm.
stayed in houses and villas and you've also done the resorts.
Hmm.
Which do you prefer? And maybe either in general or Costa Rica specifically.
Yeah.
Just what do you like about both? And as a general rule, which one do you prefer?
So you're talking like get a house or like set a hotel?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because families,
Yeah.
especially when there's more than two kids, it's like, okay, if I've got more than four people, I have to get two rooms sometimes. Is it really
Mhm.
worth it, or should I just get a VRBO or an Airbnb that
Yeah.
has two or three rooms? You've done both, so which
We
one do you
have.
prefer?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh. I would say I probably would prefer the the hotel for the food. So I don't, I personally don't love having to handle food when I'm on vacation, you know? And my wife probably disagrees with me on that. She might give you a different answer, but our most memorable experiences um were were at the hotel, and that's a lot of it has to do with the fact that like food and everything is right there. Like you just walk down there and they take care of you. But I will say that the um having having a private pool and having your own space where the kids can like stretch out depending on how many kids you have and how young they are, having spaces where they can stretch out, that's again that's certainly an advantage of the VRBO having like a house. So I think it's really just kind of family dependent. But
Yeah,
I mean, with every both times we've been down there, we have done both, you know.
awesome.
Yeah.
And tell me about how travel in general, again, going back to the question or the thought of like, maybe my kids are too young to travel, especially internationally. Tell me about how travel, or at least what you guys have seen, how does it impact your kids? How has it changed their
Hmm.
outlook on certain circumstances, or how have you guys used it to teach them new
Yeah.
things?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good question. And we've noticed, especially in our older kids, that travel really builds perspective for them. And when they come back home, we can see a difference in them, that perspective, especially internationally, culturally, that builds confidence. And you can certainly see that in the older kids. And, so for us, getting out to other parts of the country and other parts of the world has been very beneficial for our kids. And we're certainly going to continue to do that. It also really helps you appreciate like your hometown. You're more curious and appreciative of what you have around you. The lens with which you look at things has changed, especially after a Costa Rica trip. Like we can tell that with the kids. Um, and there's Costa Rica is like it's a simple country. Like people are happy there, and it's simple, and that sort of simplicity is what we always try to like explain to our kids. But you go down to Costa Rica and you can see people living it more so than you can see it here. So I always tell my kids, simplicity, and we preach that stuff, and then and then you go down the block and you see people not living that lifestyle, and that is so it's tough to really kind of drive that home. But you go down to Costa Rica and people are happy, and it doesn't matter. I think one of the most interesting things, we go down there, and in the States you meet somebody, and within 10 seconds of you meeting somebody in the States, the question is asked, what do you do for a living? And in Costa Rica, like I didn't answer that question once. I've been down there for a total of what, 4 weeks. No one's ever asked me that. And I think that that is kind of interesting. And it says a lot about the culture down there, and just the way that, that people live. And that's is very refreshing. And it is it's a culture and I'm really glad that I've exposed my kids to.
Awesome. And what would you say to other parents that are looking to travel for the first time, whether it be to Costa Rica or any other international
Mhm.
destination? Is it worth it? What would you say like the average or what the minimum age would be to bring your kids? And what's just some advice that you'd give to them?
I think that the kids, they learn so much through osmosis. And I think that when you're trying to decide if it's, what the right age for your child is before you start traveling, whether it's internationally or even domestically, I think it probably depends on the kid, but also depends on you. if it's going to be too stressful for you as a parent, don't do it. But I think that if you can plan a trip wherever it is, and I think Costa Rica is very doable. If you can plan it in a way that you're excited about it, and you are not going to put yourself in a position where have overextended yourself and you're stressed out about this, that, or the other thing, then there is no minimum age, in my opinion, because the kids will feed off of you and your excitement, and you can just, you can tell, the anticipation of the trip, and when you get there, you're excited, and the kids are excited too. I mean, at the end of the day, like the young ones, like the 2-year-old, they're going to remember the pool, they're not necessarily going to remember like the things, but they're going to remember how they felt. And that's really what ultimately you're trying to do anyway. At least that's what we're trying to do. As the kids get older, then they remember more of the things, the stuff. But I don't know that there's necessarily, I think it's more parent specific than it is kid specific, to be honest with you. If you are a parent that can plan appropriately and not stress yourself and your family out, then do it. You're good.
Awesome. And so you guys have been to Costa Rica 2 times, probably for about a month in total.
Mm-hmm.
You've
Yeah.
probably been to, I don't know, 6 or 7 locations. Are you
Yeah.
looking to come back?
Yeah.
Do you think there's
Absolutely.
enough to explore?
Absolutely. The only problem we've got is right now it's not hostile. Hostile's not the right word, but it might get there in terms of where we're going to go. My wife and I have different opinions on where we want to go when we go back. And so I want to go back to Arnall. I want to go to the middle. I want the mountains again. And she, loves the beach, and I love the beach too. Like, it's just, there's not a wrong answer. But I mean, all kidding aside, yeah, we're definitely coming back. It's just a matter of when and where. And we're fortunate now because we've got 1 or 2 trips under our belt, and we've seen a lot. And so next time we go, we can be like, all right, we're feeling it this time, and we'll do that next time. So we're very lucky that we've been able to have, start to accumulate some of those, that experience and knowledge.
So, well, thank you so much. I think this was super helpful, at least for me, and also as someone who's about to start our own family, the travel tips. And I think, a lot of what you say is true. It comes down sometimes to the parents. We like to say, oh, my kids don't like this, or my kids aren't, they don't adapt easily, but I think it does come down a lot.
Yeah. And usually when a parent's saying that about their kids, they're just kind of saying that about themselves, and believe me, and that's not a judgment. I've said it before, so, but having the benefit of hindsight. Yeah, I think if you're ready, your kid will be ready too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Guys, we'll leave Ryan's email down here below in case anyone has any questions. Maybe you're looking to travel with 4 kids and you have a specific question about something, or what Ryan and his wife Trish have done, what's been super helpful for them. I'll leave his email down here below. But Ryan, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
And we look forward to having you back in Costa Rica.
Sounds great. Thanks, Jess.
As ever, a fantastic conversation and interview. Thank you, Jess. That was brilliant. And Ryan, thank you for your insight and jumping on with Jess to have this conversation. Understanding the things that you love the most, the top 3 things about visiting Costa Rica, what Pura Vida meant to you as a foreigner coming down, and just the simple way of living. It was very insightful. Guys, I hope you enjoyed it as well. As mentioned, please don't forget to let us know if you have any questions or what you thought of the podcast in the description box below. As ever, please don't forget to subscribe to stay in touch and never miss an episode. I will be back soon for another episode on the Costa Rica Travel and Living podcast. So from myself, Adam Baker, and from Jess, hasta la próxima.